Hello, this is Adrian Paul from the SAP Customer Experience Group, and welcome to this latest video tutorial in which we'll take an overview look at the data preparation room in SAP Lumira. The data preparation room allows you to view, update and manipulate your current existing input data so that better suited to the upcoming visualizations that you'd like to create. So, in order to demonstrate this, I've launched SAP Lumira Desktop and connected to the sample Best Run Co-op dataset that comes delivered with the product. Firstly, we can tell that we are in the data preparation room because the top left tab here, Prepare, has been clicked. And when we're in the data preparation room, the general layout is that on the left we see a list of the measures and dimensions of the current input data set. The name of the data set is actually shown here at the top. It's truncated here, but it's then actually repeated at the bottom here on the status bar of Lumira, along with the total number of rows and columns which have been read in and are being displayed. On the top here are some global functions which operate on the data set as a whole, and we'll come to that in a moment. And on the right hand side, this gray area here will later be filled up with individual operations and functions that can be performed on specific columns and cells within the data. Again, we'll come to that in a moment. So let's take a look at some of the global functions at the top of the screen. We can change the view of the data set by using some of these controls. Right now, in blue here, showing that it's been clicked, is the grid view, and as its name suggests, this shows you the data in a grid or spreadsheet-like fashion with the column headers at the top and the data underneath. We can switch to a facet view by clicking here, and what happens then is that the individual columns change so that we see the unique values for data within the column, in this case such as 2 pocket shirts, belts, bags, wallets, Bermudas, etc., and then the individual number of occurrences for each of these values. In addition to that, we have a show hide function here. So right now I've selected all the columns to display, but I can deselect them there and then maybe select just one or two. Let's just say city and country. And if I click on done there, we'll see just the city and country columns are shown. Going back to the show hide functionality, we can select all the columns again and say done. And let's then go back now to the grid view. So now going back up to the top global functions again, we see a drop down here for calculations, and here we can actually add a new calculated dimension and a new calculated measure. That is additional columns that are based on the existing columns. This is a very powerful feature. We're not going to go into those further in this video presentation, as there are other video tutorials which focus on those. Additionally, we have combine as operations. Merging and appending allows you to add different data sets, combine them into this one. And again, these are highlighted in additional specific video tutorials, so we won't be dwelling on those here. We have a refresh button here which allows the data to be refreshed and in case the source data has changed, and an undo button to undo a particular operation common to many other computer applications. Here we have the new dataset button, and as I mentioned earlier with the combine as functions, we can combine different data sets into one here. And the way you would add a new data set is simply clicking on this, and you can see here we can source our data from a variety of places. Currently we're looking at a Microsoft Excel file, but we can also download from HANA and so on. So now we can also remove some of the panels here on this display by clicking on the arrows here, and again now we see the full dataset name here. So now let's look at some of the operations which we can perform to manipulate data that's provided with Lumira. We can select any of the columns here. Let's take the date column here. One of the most common things that we might want to do with the date is change the particular date format. And if you want to make a change to the column data, what you need to do is to click on the little drop down arrow and when you do that you get a listing of operations that can be performed. So what we would want to do straight away, let's say, is change the display formatting. This is the current date format that we have. So let's say we want to change it to a format with hyphens in the middle or separators. Click OK, and we see the data comes back with the data updated, the formatting updated. We may also want to perform some other operations which actually change our existing columns and create new columns. We can do that again if we click on a column header here. We don't have to click on the drop down arrow because the data functions can also appear on the right hand side here. So what we're going to do is take the manager dimension and split it into two new dimensions in which the first name and the last name are shown separately. So to do that, we can go into the split function here, and that opens up to say what particular value do we want to split the data contained within manager on. It's initially coming up with space. We can select comma, semicolon, and so on, but space is what we want because our first and last name of manager is in fact delimited by space. So let's click on apply, and we see that in fact two new manager columns have been created, manager 2 and manager 3, and with the data values either side of the delimiting space. So we have the first name here and the last name there. So let's rename this new column manager 3, and then we'll click on the rename function here. So we'll change what's there right now, which is manager 3, and put in manager last name and apply that. And we see that the column header has changed to manager last name. And now let's say that we no longer want the first name, so we want to remove that, and we can do that by simply clicking on remove here, and it asks for a confirmation, and I say yes, and now we just have the original manager column and manager last name. So we can also perform data manipulation operations on individual cells rather than entire columns. And to show that, let's perform an operation on the lines dimension here, and I'll click on that. And instead of clicking on the entire column as is done right now, let's say I want to change just the occurrences of sweat t-shirts so that the T in the middle is a small t instead of a large T. So I click on sweat t-shirts, and then I can go to the right hand side here and say apply a change only to the same cell values rather than all the cells, and we're going to do a replace here. So I'm asked what I want to replace, so I'm going to find the current sweat t-shirts data value and replace that with sweat hyphen small t shirts, and I'll apply that, and we see that that's been changed. Let's perform another operation which shows how I can combine two existing columns and to create another column. So let's go to the category dimension and do a control and then click on the lines dimension, and by doing a multiple select like that, Lumira instantly knows that I might want to do some joint operations on those selected columns. And on the right hand side we can go to concatenate, click on that to expand, and it's asking me how I would like to concatenate these into a new column. and ask me to provide a particular separator or delimiter. And I'm going to select a comma and then apply this. And let's see what happens. And we see here that our original category column and city column have been merged into a new column called merged column. So let's change this name to category-lines and apply that. And there we have our new column. Now we can actually apply filters on our input data here in the data preparation room to limit what is shown in subsequent visualizations and storyboards. And you see here up at the top all along we have this message, no filter applied currently on the dataset. Or we can apply a filter by clicking on a particular column, in this case country, and let's say we want to add a filter and just limit our data to the USA. So we select USA and say keep only and then press OK, and our data is returned only with the USA values. So now we're at a stage where we can perhaps start to visualize our data, having manipulated several elements of this data in the data preparation room. So we can go to the Visualize tab and let's start showing some of the data which we created and manipulated. Let's first of all drag in a measure, the gross margin, and then we can drag in our new combined dimension category lines. We put that on the y-axis here. We see all those values there. And we can put in manager last name as the legend. And we see the new last name information here. Perhaps it's better visualized in a column chart. Not quite so, but we can zoom in here and filter on that and see some better data. So this concludes this video tutorial on the data preparation overview for SAP Lumira. Hopefully you found this useful. Thank you for watching, and hopefully this information will help you in your usage of SAP Lumira. Thank you again.